Welcome. So this week's webinar, I thought I'd talk about freight costs. Been mucking around with this one for a bit, just trying to get the right feeling for it and get a bit better numbers on it. What we look at, this webinar started basically by looking at that end of year stock take issue and then saying, okay, well, cost of goods, the unit cost is pretty easy to calculate, but how do you calculate freight costs? And so I wanted to kind of develop a reasonable system for that. And so mucked around with it a bit to try and get it to the right standard. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Just a system that we developed. I've got a spreadsheet that I'll share with you that kind of developed along the way. And so we can start to have a look at some of these other costs in relation to freight costs and what's better, which ways to go. Some interesting things came out from it. My perceptions of what freight was cheaper, it became interesting in just terms of looking at what the actual costs were. So let's get stuck into it. So what's happened over the last 2 years? There's been inventory restrictions from Amazon. So that's been both they changed around the storage limits, then they put limits on per ASINs, then they put limits on overall units, which is still in play. And so we've got, people had enormous problems in relation to that. We had freight delays. We had, because of the inventory restrictions, you couldn't just send in as much inventory as you needed. You need to get 3PLs. And that added a level of cost to your business. And in terms of that supply chain, that really blew things out. And we're seeing that a lot this year in terms of people's expectations of their profits. They're suddenly saying, oh, I thought I was making X amount of dollars, and now they're making significantly less because we've had to do these big stock write-offs because their freight and 3PL costs were much higher than they expected. So there was delays sending into Amazon from 3PLs, so that the whole system got jammed up. We had a number of systems. We had large amounts of stock trying to go into Amazon, and basically we missed for 2 years in a row, probably 6 weeks of the fourth quarter sales. Significant. We couldn't send, and it's still the case, we can't send a container directly into Amazon. We try and do that even using Amazon Global Logistics. Amazon will split up a full container and put it into a number of containers. Amazon Global Logistics is actually pretty slow as well. That's the other thing we found from it. There's increased competition, increased PPC costs. They're not really 3PL, freight issues, but the first 5 are. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's look at 3PL costs. Something's come about. Everyone's had to say, oh, I need a 3PL somewhere in the States so that we can send in up the stock earlier. Hopefully, you're trying to, but there was additional costs associated with that. Now, I just had a look at a couple of the people we're using along the way. A container unpacking fee, $500 to $900 per container. If it was loose freight, it could be anywhere from $2 to $5 per box. If the container took longer to unpack, is $45 per man hour over to. There's a software fee, a fixed charge every year. There could be a couple of them have got some things like that. A pallet loading. So when you take unless your container is packed via pallets, which is probably not, then they would unpack the containers and put it onto pallets. So $15 to $25 per pallet. Then there was a forwarding fee. So from picking it up from their warehouse, the 3PL, and sending it off to Amazon was $2.80 to $4.25 a carton. The storage fee from $10 to $40 per month per container, per pallet, but some there's differences in that. An admin fee, sorry, frog in my throat. So it's all these additional costs that have suddenly been added onto them. So we need to one of the process was, well, what is the actual freight costs? So as part of that, we need to analyze the different things because freight's referred is terms of weight per carton in terms of kilograms and in pounds. The freight forward is using kilograms. When you get to the States, everything's in pounds. The volume per carton in cubic meters and cubic feet. The volume weight is important if you've got something large and light. The units per carton, so you need to grab some invoices for freight, and we need to get the 3PL price lists or invoices. So you need to get together some data that you've got in relation to that. You may look at a number of months, a number of different shipments along the way and say, okay, well, let's split out what the costs are. The next thing you need to do is create a master inventory file. Now, at this point, I am going to share a file with you. Hopefully I can do it. Oh, it's not going to share easily from there. Bear with me a sec. Oh. And it's not going to show where it is. Wait a sec. Okay, wait a sec. I just have to close this. And I will try again and retry it. Okay, so what I've shared with everyone is bear with me a sec, bring it up, a master inventory file, okay? We use this file for lots of things. We use it for budgeting, we use it for 0 and A to X, you know, to uploading FBA shipments, orders, we're using it all the time. So if you've got that file there, has everyone got it now? Just use the chat to say yes or no. The chat's disabled on the screen. Okay, can everyone see the chat? Let me just check what the chat, technically it should. Just, is anyone able to see the chat and actually get the download? Okay, so chat's disabled. Let me just see if I can fix that one. That's really annoying. If chat's downloaded, got the file. Disabled, wait a sec. Let me just see if I can work out what's, attendees can chat with everyone. Okay, so chat should work now. Don't know why that was off. Did someone want to type into message? Excellent. Rightio, got it. Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so we use this file for lots of things. So basically, I'll just take you through the steps of it. We've got, let's share this. Let's share the file instead. I'll go through that. So basically, we've got in here with SKU. So I've commented out our products. I put our SKU in there. I put our ASIN. We put out our EAN. We put in our product name. So what we call the product. We put in the product cost. Now the unit freight cost, we have a calculation over here to do that. But then we put other things in there, unit cost per carton, the size of the carton and the weight. Okay, so you know, generally most of the products are there. Let me see if I can share that. I will share it in a sec. again. We've got the cubic meters per carton. So that's quite often on your packing slips. You'll find all this information. Your manufacturer will generally supply all this information. We've got the unit weight per carton. The volume weight here, I've calculated at 4,000. I don't use volume weights because our products are heavy enough, I suppose. But if you do need a volume weight, it's in there. And then we've just got a quick conversion into imperial. So you're going to use this imperial numbers for Amazon things. And we've got these other ones here where we can cut the weight of the freight and duties per carton. So we've got 480 there. If we do it on a per kilo rate, we can calculate it there. So that calculation basically feeds back into this freight cost. Okay. So that's the first part of it. Let me see if I can share that screen, that file again. Okay, I'll come back to it. Let me, sorry, I have to close it each time I want to share it. Okay, so that's been shared again. I'll share it again at the end if people are having problems with it as well. Okay. Okay, so we use this a lot. So when I'm doing a 52-week cash flow model, you know, that big horrible thing, we can just drop in these SKUs or the product names and we've got all the costs available to it. We rework it and we put it into 0 and A to X. We use this FBA shipment details to put in here. I'm going to add a couple more things to this file. Yeah, a couple of things on the end. I'm going to put in a link to our Google Drive or Drive so that we can say this is the labels that we've got for each one, or this is the carton labels that we're going to put on each one. So we just use this master inventory file all the time. We just copy it across, rework it. So this is our master that we use all the time. Okay. So that's the first thing you need to do, because we need to find out a couple of things. We need to find out the cubic meters per carton, and we need to find out the weight. Okay. Ours are all fairly similar there for the purposes of this. Okay. Rightio. So let's go to the next thing. So, okay, this is messy. In the spreadsheet, there's a folder. Let's go to the spreadsheet. It'll be easier. Okay, so what we've done is we've said, okay, let's look at the 40-foot high cube. So we've got some data in here. You can change this to whatever you want. Okay, the last shipment I had 57.8 in it. We've generally found that even though a 40-foot high cube contains 65, maybe 76, really they don't say they can fit that much in it. There's not that much difference between a high Q and a Q. So it's usually around 60, but this particular one had 57.8 in it. It was the latest container. So the cubic feet, we just do straight conversion there. So from cubic meters to cubic feet. The number of cartons, so in this case, we shipped 561 cartons. The number of units per carton, I've just said we've got 35 units a carton. The number of pallets, this one I just said, okay, it's 80 cubic feet to a pallet, because that's what one of the found out somewhere along the way. It's a rough guess. So we're saying we've got about 26 pallets and we're doing one shipment. So our last shipment into Amazon cost us $10,000 for the container. But then we had $3,806 in other costs. Drayage, which is shipment to and from the port, from the supplier to the port, from LA port into the 3PL. There was also freights, other freight costs, entrance fees, etc. That added up to $3,800. The duties were $5,000, and so we ended up with that. So that's just getting it into the 3PL or to the door of the 3PL. Then I had a look at what our 3PL costs were. Really, we only got the invoices recently for that. So they had a container unloading fee of $825. Then there was a pallet fee of $15. There was storage fees for 3 months. I said storage fee for 3. It's $40 per month. But I said, okay, we bought 3 months worth of stock. Well, it's going to last for 3 months. And therefore, I've just divided that by 2. So there's $1,500 in storage fees. And the box forwarding cost at 40 units, 40 cartons at a time was $3.75. So the total costs are almost $5,000 in 3PL costs for one container. Then had a look through and said, well, how much did Amazon charge me for basically picking up, for picking up the packages at my 3PL and sending it into Amazon? Okay. Had a look, they varied along the way. The average was $6.74. Now, you're going to have a look at what yours is for that. So we found that the total freight costs of getting this in was $27,000. So to get it from Amazon, from the warehouse all the way into Amazon. So that was interesting. I haven't sent products via just LCLs for a while. I happened to the other day because we ordered more than a container, so we had a little bit more. So we got to see what there was. So the costs there were $225 per cubic meter. So I've just used the same data. I've said, okay, let's assume, but rather than send it the same amount via full container, we're going to send it via 6 shipments via LCL, okay? Little bits at a time. So LCL costs $225 per cubic meter. The freight costs, that included for us, that included the drayage. So basically getting it from the supplier to the warehouse. In China, that's fairly cheap, to the port, and then the cost to get it to Amazon, that wasn't too bad. I think they had lots of containers going to Amazon anyway, so ended up cheap. The freight costs about $100 per shipment, so we end up with $600 there. Duties, the same, okay? So the cost of sending it via LCLs was about the same as sending it via a 40-foot container, which was interesting. I didn't expect that. I thought that it would have been much cheaper to send it via the full container. Then we had a look at, okay, maybe it was more expensive at the other end. We still got storage fees. We've still got the pallet fees. We've still got the loose freight unloading. Well, I've put up the price a bit there, but still that wasn't too bad. So we ended up with almost the same cost selling it via LCLs, via a 3PL. Thought, okay, that's interesting. I then wanted to do the comparison of what happens if we send it the same shipment, same amount, but we put it in a Chinese 3PL. So I've basically said that the Chinese 3PL is a quarter of the cost. Okay. So the costs there are the same. The 3PL costs at the China end are a bit cheaper. So we end up with $20,000. So if there's an opportunity to send it via 3PL, that's an option. We looked at a third option. Wait a sec. Fourth option. Well, so just bear with me so everyone can see it properly. Wait a sec. I'll just drop it down a little bit more. That's it. Okay. So this one, we've said, okay, well, rather than send it through a 3PL at all, why don't I just send 6 shipments into Amazon? Now, I can do this because, one, I've got unlimited storage because my inventory performance index is over 400 now. So I've got unlimited storage for next quarter. And I've got enough room in my inventory limits. So we could do it the same way. Basically, we just end up with 18 grand. So what's happened in the last year is we've basically got another last 2 years, because we've had to use 3PLs, we've had to use the total freight costs have gone up. Basically by $10,000 per container. I've got some other calculations down here, which show kind of cubic meter rates. So if we send it directly via a 3PL, our actual costs are $480 per cubic meter. 482 on a using an LCL. Via China, it could be around 357. And if we've got if we just send it direct, it's 328. So what we'd do, if we wanted to calculate what our actual freight costs are, we take that 480.79, and then our inventory master, we put in up here 480.79, and it will change that freight cost based on this cubic meters per carton. We can say, oh, okay, divided by the number of units per carton. So let me just make sure I haven't missed anything here. Okay, so let's look at the profitability. We'll go back to the spreadsheet. There's another tab in here called profitability. We'll just make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. So assuming we sell for $25, product costs $4, freight to China, China to USA, doesn't really change that much. 3PL costs, you can see there. Amazon costs inbound, FBA cost doesn't change. Profitability goes from, $10.40, there's 40 cents difference, okay? So in terms of the savings, if we're selling 100,000 units a year, about 2.5 million in sales, we've got a saving there of 44,000. Oh, okay. That's not a lot of money, really. On 2.5 million, we've got a 40 cent saving. So what's all the issue about? And this is where it becomes important. Let me just, we'll deal with it. Let's go back a couple of steps. So why do we order 3 to 6 months worth of inventory? Well, we get volume discounts from the manufacturer, okay? Yeah, if we order a container at a time, they're generally giving us a bit better prices. We've got savings in freight by sending by full container. Well, we thought we did, but it's not really the case. We've got minimum order quantities. That's an issue. If you've got a minimum order quantity, you've got to do something about it. Yeah. So that's why people sometimes may order more than they actually need. We might be unsure about our sales levels. Okay. Absolutely. We're putting in a buffer for uncertainty. And the other one is we just don't have enough to place orders more regularly. Okay. So it's really simple. That's why we kind of order 3 to 6 months. What we're seeing for a lot of these things, we're not really getting any major savings. Okay. Now, in terms of those numbers we looked at before, I just want to show you a couple of things in terms of those prices. Okay, so this is Amazon Global Logistics. Okay, we've found that their prices are fairly close. So we're just using those same numbers as before. In here, we're using 225. So Amazon Global Logistics, they're charging for this, basically Shanghai to ONT8, a couple of those ones. I don't know whether we get into those. 152, 173. There's a couple that are more expensive. Chicago, Illinois, etc. But we're kind of looking at about 250. There seems to be a couple of ones that might be used for large things along the way that are more expensive. But we're using it at that kind of rate. The ocean freight rate, we use 10,000. This is their August figures. It's a bit cheaper sending into some of these places, but etc. Import clearance fee. They also not included in that is the drayage from China, from the warehouse into the Amazon warehouse, into the Amazon collection facility in China. So the prices are fairly similar along the way in terms of those prices. They're kind of, what we found is these are much slower. Just as in case you're looking, air freight, they're looking at, where is PV, looking at about $9 a kilo. Okay, so let's move across from there. So those numbers, they're kind of same numbers we put in before. We kind of end up the same type of, in terms of the difference between the LCL and a full container, it didn't seem to make that much difference. So we're ordering lots. And this is actually pretty common. When we did that study, benchmarking on 2021 accounts, we looked at the inventory days. So on average, for the group that was selling over $700,000 a year in sales, the average inventory days was 240. It's 9 months worth of stock. For the sellers between 150,000 and 700,000, they've got $395,000 worth of stock. Sort of days worth of stock, over a year's worth of stock. There is a couple of reasons for this. In these two groups, we've got those really high inventory days. Someone had, basically a couple of people had almost 3 years worth of stock. They've over-ordered, etc. But even if you look at this group here, some have very little stock, others have over a year. There's a couple that had even more. But on average, there's a good number in this one, over almost 9 months of stock. Okay, so they had a lot more stock than they were thinking about. That includes us. Okay. Your cash gets stuck in inventory. Okay. If you're wondering where the money is, it's in inventory. So what happens if we can speed things up? Okay. So the issue was, we look back to those economies of scale. Okay, we've got some orders in supplier may give us cheaper rates if we order more. Okay, so a couple of things we could do. We want to order more often on a monthly basis. Okay, so we just go, okay, we're going to order each month. So what we might do is order 3 months worth of inventory, pay the deposit on that, but we want the delivery done monthly over 3 months, and we're going to ship that directly into Amazon. Okay, and we pay the final payment for whatever they've made for that month. Okay, so that may work for some people. Okay, it's not going to work for everybody, but that's one way around it. It depends partly on the production line. Okay, It might be that your production is, it might take them quite a while to produce it anyway. And if they just can produce some and then let's let that amount go and just basically let's let them go as they're ready, it can end up cheaper. The option two is you agree on a price for the year. Okay, we're going to order this much in stock. We pay a deposit on the monthly order and the final when it's complete. The first of each month, you place the other order. And one way you can do this is last month's sales times a factor. Okay. So let's assume we've got, well, let's say we had a 10% sales increase 10% on the month before. Okay. So the next month we might go, okay, we're going to place 10% more. Let's assume our sales are going up by 10% a month. Fantastic if they are. But let's assume that, okay, we're going to place an order for, 120% of sales, okay? Because it's going to take a month and a bit to get there. We might say, okay, we've got Christmas coming up, we've got some more in there, and we shipped it directly into Amazon. Okay. In both cases, they're going directly into Amazon. All we're doing is ordering the same amount, but just shipping it more often and paying for it more often. So let's look at a simple cash flow on this. So a really simple cash flow. Okay. We could do a big cash flow, but let's do a simple one. So we've got three numbers. These numbers should be easy to find. We've got a sales, 500,000 for the last 12 months. We've got profit, we made 85,000. So the ratio of profit to sales is 17%. Okay. That's kind of about average for $500,000 worth of sales. And we've got inventory at cost at 120,000. So these are numbers you can do now because you've got for June, basically. So we've got that ratio is 24%, 120,000 over 500,000. Let's see what happens if we grow. Okay. Let's say next year we're going to do 2 million in sales. Okay. It's all flying through the roof and we're going to do 2 million. So our profit is going to stay the same. So we're not changing anything in terms of the operations. So our profit at 17% is 340,000. We've still got the same supply chain. So instead of needing $120,000 worth of stock, we're going to need 480,000. Okay. So if we want to do the cash flow, we've got 340,000 worth of profits. So we're going to say that's the cash from operations. We've got tax on last year on this figure, 25%, less the increase in inventory, 480,000 minus 120. We don't have enough money. Now, this is a really simple cash flow. Reality is that would be far worse on that type of growth. But I mucked around with these numbers to run a simple one on this. So let's say we fix the supply chain, okay? And we order monthly. And as a result, we halve our inventory ratio, okay? So rather than hold on average 240 days, we're now holding 120 days worth of inventory because we're shipping it in as quick all the time from our supplier. There's some positives to that by shipping it in all the time. When we're not stuck, given that we haven't got there's no savings in sending in a full container, we don't have problems with one container getting stuck on one ship. We've got multiple shipments coming in on multiple different ships in multiple different containers. So we've diversified our risk there. But so rather than need $480,000 worth of stock, we only need 240. So in terms of the numbers, we got 340,000 from cash flow from operations, being the profit, less the tax, but the increase is only 120,000. So we've got an additional $250,000, $240,000 worth of cash available just by changing our inventory. Now, if you remember on this, by taking out the 3PLs in terms of a per unit cost, it was only 40 cents. We're not looking at, if we looked at the savings over a similar type of sales, it was 40 grand. But by changing the inventory, buying more often, we've increased our cash flow by $240,000. Okay, ordering monthly. It works when you've got enough buffer inventory in Amazon to allow for volatility in events. Okay, so you might have 6 to 8 weeks of stock in there. Okay, you've got to have enough stock in there. You can't. It's not something with Amazon at the moment. I wouldn't want to be doing just-in-time inventory. Okay, I want to have you're down to 4 weeks, maybe 6, and then the next amount's coming in. You don't want to get too low on Amazon because the amount of stock in each fulfillment center reduces, and therefore, people aren't going to get the next day delivery. It'll be the next couple of days. The other thing is we need to have no inventory restrictions. Okay, in terms of storage, so that needs to be unlimited, and the units needs to be sufficiently big. Now, the risk is, of course, that Amazon change the rules on you and you get caught. But you still, it hasn't happened yet. I haven't heard of any issues they're talking about this year in terms of that. And the other one is the sales have stabilized. It makes it much easier to order on a monthly basis if your sales have stabilized. Okay. It doesn't work when you're out of stock. Okay. You've got no buffer stock. So if you're doing that just in time, basically you're ordering whatever you can. You've got Amazon inventory restrictions. Okay. That's going to throw things out because you can't put enough shipments in, FBA shipments in. Because if you're doing an FBA shipment from an LA warehouse, you're basically hoping to get it in 2 weeks. So you can have that. If you've got inventory restrictions and you've got a 6-week inventory, the stock's going to take from China to the Amazon warehouse is going to take 6 weeks, then there's a problem because you're just not going to have enough to be able to put in there. And your sales are rapidly increasing or unknown. Okay. I don't think it's going to be as easy to do that ordering monthly basis.